On a cold Chicago morning in February 1929, 7 men were lined up against a garage wall. Gunfire echoed. Blood mixed with snow on the ground. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre went down in world history, but the trigger man wasn't there. He was sunbathing in Miami while his rivals were being eliminated. Everyone knew his name, but no one could touch him. Now I'm going to tell you the story you've never heard about Al Capone, the FBI's public enemy #1, Chicago's Shadow King, a man who made $100 million a year, but would eventually go to prison for dodging $5,000 in taxes. This isn't just a gangster story. This is the story of the dark side of the American dream, how a nation could fall in love with a criminal, and how power can turn into decay. 1920, birth of a ghost. Alphonse Capone was born in Brooklyn in 1899, the child of Italian immigrant parents. He was one of 6 siblings. His father was a barber, his mother a seamstress. They were an average family until Alphonse punched his teacher at age 14 and got expelled from school. While looking for opportunities on the streets, he met a man named Johnny Torrio, a master of organized crime. Torrio saw something in him, not just muscle, but brains. He took him under his wing. When 1920 arrived, America made a historic mistake. The 18th Amendment banned the sale of alcohol. Prohibition had begun, and this ban created the greatest opportunity in history for the criminal underworld. When Torrio moved to Chicago, he took Capone with him. The city was boiling like a volcano. Dozens of gangs, hundreds of underground bars, millions of dollars, and one rule in the middle: you either become powerful or you die. The rise, Scarface's empire. In 1925, Torrio retired. Bullet wounds and exhaustion defeated him. He left his empire to 26-year-old Capone. No one knew that day that this young man would turn Chicago into a dark kingdom. Capone was different from other gangsters. He didn't just use force, he used the media too. Describing himself as a second-hand furniture dealer, Capone gave interviews to journalists, distributed soup to the poor, and sent coal to the needy at Christmas. The public saw him as a Robin Hood, but the truth was much darker. Under his control were over 300 bars, 10,000 employees, protection rackets, gambling, prostitution, and smuggling networks. Half of the Chicago police were on his payroll: judges, politicians, mayors. Everyone either worked with Capone or died opposing him. But one thing bothered everyone: the 3 deep scars on Capone's face. The nickname Scarface came from this. When someone called him by that name, his eyes darkened with rage. Conflict. Blood runs in the streets. By the late 1920s, there were over 130 gang wars in Chicago. Leaders of rival gangs were disappearing one by one. The rules were simple: either you make a deal with Capone or you die. Bugs Moran controlled the most powerful gang in North Chicago. He was Capone's biggest rival. There was a years-long hidden war between them. Every week, a body on a corner, a car sunk in the river. But Capone was patient, and he was waiting for his time to deliver the most deadly blow. February 14th, 1929, Valentine's Day. Moran's men gathered at a garage in Lincoln Park. They thought they were waiting for a bootleg liquor delivery, but those who entered weren't liquor dealers. 4 men dressed in police uniforms entered. They lined Moran's men against the wall and told them to raise their hands. It seemed like a routine raid. Then the machine guns started talking. 70 rounds fired, 7 bodies. The garage wall looked like a sieve from bullet holes. Blood, snow, and silence. Capone was in Miami at the time. He had a perfect alibi. He told reporters he was shocked and condemned this savagery. But everyone knew the truth. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre was the moment Capone reached his peak. There were no rivals left in Chicago, but this peak was also the beginning of his end. A man at the top, a nation in the pit. In the fall of 1929, the economic collapse, the Great Depression, hit America. Millions became unemployed. Families were broken by hunger. But Capone's coffers kept filling. He was making $100 million a year. In today's money, billions. Diamond earrings, gold watches, Havana cigars, silk suits. He used the entire fourth floor of the Metropole Hotel as his office. He had armored cars and armed bodyguards. He lived like a president. But he wasn't a president. He was a criminal, and the FBI couldn't arrest him. He had an alibi for every murder. There were no fingerprints in every smuggling operation. When he went to court, jury members were too scared to speak. Capone was untouchable until 1931. The fall $5,000 in taxes. J. Edgar Hoover, FBI director, became obsessed with Capone. Every day he looked at his file. Hundreds of murders, thousands of illegal operations, but not a single conviction. If we can't get him for murders, Hoover said, let's get him for tax evasion. This seemed absurd. Would they prosecute America's most dangerous criminal over tax forms? But Elliot Ness and the Untouchables team did exactly that. They examined Capone's records, millions of dollars in income, but not a penny of tax paid to the IRS. A mountain of evidence was built. October 17, 1931, chaos erupted in the courtroom. Capone entered laughing. His lawyers had bought the jury members, but the judge changed the jury at the last minute. The smile on Capone's face froze. The verdict was announced, 11 years in prison, not for bootlegging, not for murders, for dodging $5,000 in taxes. America's most powerful gangster fell due to an accounting error. Alcatraz, a legend rots. In 1934, Capone was transferred to Alcatraz prison. This fortress in San Francisco Bay was the place where escape was impossible. No one called him Mr. Capone anymore. Just Prisoner 85. Prison life broke him. Protection, money, power. None of it worked there. Other inmates targeted him. He was stabbed, beaten. Days, weeks, years. Time rotted him. But the real enemy was invisible. Syphilis. Capone had been carrying this disease for years but had refused treatment. Now it was slowly eating away at his brain. He started having hallucinations. He confused the past with the present. Sometimes he still thought he was the king of Chicago. In 1939, he was released early. He was too sick to pose a threat anymore. The end. A ghost house. He returned to his mansion in Miami. Sun, palm trees, pool. But nothing was the same anymore. Capone's mind was shattered. While talking to his family, he would suddenly start giving orders to his men. He would sit by the pool for hours, fighting imaginary enemies. January 25, 1947, he died of a heart attack. He was 48 years old. Hundreds of people came to his funeral, but no one from his old empire was there. Most were dead, most in prison. The rest had long forgotten him. Scarface was now just a tombstone. Epilogue. What does a legend leave behind? Al Capone became part of American culture. Movies, TV series, books. When you say gangster, his name is still the first that comes to mind. But what is the real legacy? Over 300 murders, thousands of broken families, a city ruled by fear, and the question of how a nation could make a criminal a hero. Capone's life is a warning. Power is temporary. Violence comes back to haunt you. And even the most powerful empires can fall over a tax form. So what was the real truth? Was Capone really a monster, or was he a product of his time? No one knows the full answer to this question. But one thing is certain. In the streets of Chicago, the ghosts of that bloody past still roam.